Hi there, and welcome to Returnology, where we talk retail, supply chain, and everyone's favorite topic, returns. For our show, we bring in experts from leading retailers, brands, and third party logistics providers to dig into some of the hottest topics, the biggest trends we're seeing in the market. We're here to help you know exactly what your customers are expecting and how you can deliver on those expectations without crushing your bottom line. So at Returnology, we basically provide you the cheat sheet to help you ace returns. I'm your host, I'm Natalie Walkley, and in today's episode, we are talking about the ABCs of supply chain, pun intended. And I'm joined here by a very special guest, Randy Tucker, CEO and chairman at Wine Shipping, board member at Geodis, and one of my favorite people to talk Alabama football with. Randy, thank you for joining us here today.
Natalie, it is certainly my privilege to be here, and I'm excited to talk over this with you. We generally get to talk about football a lot. Something tells me we'll be into more career-oriented topics today, but I'm looking forward to it.
We'll fold in some fun stuff too, in addition
Excellent.
to
That's good news. That's good news.
So before we dig in, Randy, obviously I've known you for years and years, but tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about wine shipping.
Well, I was born in 19. Oh, wait a minute. No, I'll move forward. I'll go past that. I was born a long time ago. Wine shipping. We're actually truth in advertising. We ship wine. We direct to consumer mostly, but we do some direct to trade and we do wholesale fulfillment. There's those have very precise terms because the alcohol beverage industry is very regulated, very controlled. But the bulk of what we do is if you go online and you order a nice Chardonnay or a nice Cab, it comes from one of our wineries that we serve. We will take that order and we'll ship it to your house, and then you will invite me over and we'll share it.
I love that idea. I would go cab for the record. Well, I'm excited to have you. Obviously, for those who don't know, Randy and I had the privilege of working together at Geodis for several years. Some other fun facts is we actually grew up going to the same lake in Alabama, Smith Lake. I still stand by that's the best lake ever. And then three, you were a part of a fulfillment provider or 3PL for one of my favorite products, wine. So very excited to have you here today. So let's just go ahead and jump right in, Randy. You've obviously been in the fulfillment space for a while now. Tell us a little bit about like your career trajectory in general.
I will. Before I do that, you left out that we also share the University of Alabama in common. We both went there, so
That's
we're
exactly right. Roll Tide. We got to throw that in there, right?
absolutely roll tide. Yeah, I've had a hard time figuring out what I want to do when I grow up. Coming out of college, I went into the aerospace industry. Really enjoyed that. What got me out of it was I just didn't enjoy working for the government. Decisions weren't generally based on good science or good economics. They were based on other things. So I jumped from that into telecommunications, and then from there into supply chain. And it has been an amazing run inside the supply chain. I started at OHL. Um, I can't recall now. Were you OHL or just Geodis?
I came on the January after the acquisition from Geodis. So we were in the midst of integration.
I thought it was real tight when you showed up. Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, I started at OHL, and then we got acquired by Geodis. And since then, I retired, but then I did. I was retired for 18 months, and then I'm here to wine shipping to work in an industry that I really, really enjoy. In a place it does not suck now to come to beautiful Napa, California. So
18 months is not a retirement, Randy. That's a sabbatical.
as it turns out, you were correct. Yeah, I took a sabbatical. I should change my language. I think I will.
Took a professional sabbatical here.
Yeah.
No, it's funny. Like when you talk supply chain, I think 5, 6 years ago, when I would tell people I was in supply chain, they really didn't quite understand what that was. And then, of course, during COVID, everyone knew what supply chain was because it's where all of our toilet paper was stuck, right? Stuck
Right.
in the supply chain.
It was.
And some people study supply chain, get a degree and then go into a career. And then some people like you and I kind of fall into it. I had good coaches that taught me the ropes, like you and our friend Dave Hopman. But what advice would you have for, say a student that's looking for potentially a career in supply chain, or even someone who's looking to make a career change?
This is a great industry to be in. As I mentioned, I was in two other industries, and supply chain is really diverse. It's two little simple words, but it involves air freight and ocean freight and customs brokerage and transportation brokerage. I could just spend the whole rest of this segment talking about all the components of it. But the one I spend the most time is in warehousing, fulfillment, and ground transportation and parcel. But there is an endless array of things that you can do inside this industry. And I would encourage anyone to do it. You get to see behind the curtain of some of the largest companies on the planet. I have had the great pleasure of looking behind the curtain at Apple, and behind the curtain at Starbucks, and behind the curtain at some of the largest wineries on the planet. And it is, what they put out is their marketing campaign, of which you are a genius at. But behind the scenes, you see a different company. Not a bad company. It's just not the marketing that you see. It's the actual inner workings of how they get from their product, their idea, their service out into the marketplace. And it is absolutely fascinating. You're not stuck inside this one little industry. The supply chain covers them all.
It's true. And it's so dynamic and it changes so quickly. And you're right. I remember the first time I went in a warehouse or a facility, it was like mind blown at kind of seeing behind that curtain, so to say. And now, like I've actually, I take my team to facilities to kind of do the same for them. And it's always this like just mesmerizing experience in some ways. Um, so as we think about just like trends and what's kind of going on in the market, what trends are you seeing or are you hearing about in supply chain right now?
There's a real hard push for visibility, which I totally get. The retailers as well as the consumers want to know where their product is in that supply chain. Whether it is setting, if you get outside of my industry and you get into the broader supply chain, if it's made in China, they want to know where it is once it leaves. Let's pick a place, Shenzhen. Is it on a freighter? Is it on an air freight? All the way through to when it gets into a fulfillment house or a distribution house. And then when it leaves there, where's its final destination? So the real push to make sure that all the retailers have clarity of their most precious asset, which is their products. Certainly, cybersecurity continues to be a big play in this business. Mechanization, which really caught a foothold during the pandemic because labor, as you well know, is very hard to get into the warehouses. And so there's been a force to push to more mechanization in order to not be so dependent upon labor because of getting services out. And last but not least, using supply chain as a competitive weapon. If you are really good at your supply chain, really delivering on time, in full, in the manner that the retailer wants, that will give you a competitive advantage over your competitors. So making sure that's razor sharp has really come into focus.
You're totally right. The supply chain is like probably the one of the biggest things that drives that shopper experience. And oftentimes shoppers don't know if it's a 3PL or a retailer or a brand doing that. So you guys have like the stakes are very high for the business that we're in.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the 3PL supply chain can make or break a retailer or a manufacturer. And that's why it's so critical that they do their due diligence on who they choose. Because if you get all your product clogged in a warehouse, or it gets damaged, or it's not there on time, or just pick up 50 different reasons where something could go wrong, uh, you damage that brand. So what we do is critical to those who are out providing products and services to their
Yeah.
customers.
Absolutely. So you mentioned labor, and I know that's been a challenge for as long as I've known you. I remember you doing an interview with Wall Street Journal on the labor challenges back in probably 2018. What are some of the other challenges kind of in the fulfillment space right now?
Well, right now, right sizing inventories has been a real play. We all familiar what happened with the pandemic. You mentioned, where's my toilet paper? It's hung up somewhere in the supply chain. So what happened was there was what can best be described as panic buying that took place. And so all these warehouses just really filled up. And then when life started turning back to normal, um, way oversupply in what they needed inside those warehouses. And more than just the paper towel and the toilet papers. It was apparel. People really got concerned about their ability to get their hands on their products. So really the last 18 months, this has been true in the wine industry as well. These warehouses here at wine shipping were packed full of wine that just wasn't moving because they overbought. Not overbought a little, like massively overpurchased the need that they had. It was fear based. So there's been a lot of draining out of that supply chain, which means inbounds have really been down, and they're actually still down. If you look at the last transportation report that just come out, LTLs are really hurting. Truckloads are really hurting because there's no trucks moving off, not none. There's no recycling of the material down. So there's been more outbound, a lot less inbound coming in. That's taking the pressure off the warehouses that are just busting at the seams. But that leveling has created a little bit of chaos across the totality of the supply chain. We're starting in, I keep referencing China because so much is made there, but starting in China, through ocean freight, through air freight, all the way through the warehouses and transportation. That's been a really big focus. It's created a lot of chaos and uncertainty in this supply chain.
Yeah, it makes sense if you think about their products being one of their largest capital expenses. But too much of it, too little of it, too much in the right place, too much in the wrong. Like you have that's such a balancing act to get the right amount of inventory to meet demand and not have stockouts, but not have the surplus, and take the hit there on your, you know.
Yet both are evil, and that's the thing that we have to be responsible to. A stockout's evil. That's revenue that you didn't get. Overbuying is evil because now all your cash is tied up saving that stock, saving the warehouse. It's not moving the speed it needs to move.
Yeah. So let's talk the ABC industry or the beverage industry. What are some of the intricacies of your space that you see? I mean, obviously at Geodis you were doing apparel, footwear, electronics, CPG, a broad kind of spectrum. What's unique about shipping wine?
Well, I will say when I was at Geodis, we actually thought about going into the wine distribution business. I've never been so grateful that we did not in that business. We were naive. I'll speak to myself. The industries are almost endless, Natalie. My favorite thing is all 50 states have different rules for moving that beverage into their state. So you have to make sure that you're compliant with wherever you're shipping. And we, by and large, are shielded because it's really the winer's responsibility. If you notice that word by and large, doesn't mean absolutely. So we have to be very responsible to if there is a case of wine going to Natalie's home, is is that winery permitted in that state? Um, and is she allowed, not you the person, but that is that address allowed to get that much wine? Because in some cases, if you order two, there's states that if you order two cases, we can't deliver it. We can only deliver one. They have limitations. Each state has something very unique. So the intricacies are almost endless. The reporting is just onerous. And so we have to make sure that we have all the systems in place, certainly communicating. We have systems in place that help track. And sometimes we have to have those delicate conversations with the customer that we just had yesterday where I can't ship that there. You don't have a permit to ship that there.
Mm.
And they don't like hearing that, but I don't like getting a letter from the state of New Jersey, I made that up, that says stop shipping here or we will ship, we'll put a padlock on your warehouse. That'd be a
Yeah,
bad moment.
the old cease and desist.
Yes. So we don't like those letters, so we work really hard to never get them.
Yes.
But be fully compliant is not, it's not a walk in the park.
Yeah. So obviously on a webcast named Returnology, you know that I'm going to talk about returns. And here at Optoro, we've been talking returns for a little over 15 years now, and working with brands and retailers and 3PLs to solve that conundrum. But what do returns look like at wine shipping? I mean, I guess the big question I had when I first started thinking about your business is like, people don't return wine, do they? Why would they do that?
Seems silly, doesn't it?
Right.
I think there's one or two that actually do it with intent. Uh, returns is a reality that we live in. It's the bane of retailers, right? They don't want it back. The wineries don't want. No one wants that product back, but it shows up for many different reasons. And um, I know your business is working on the secret sauce or has a secret sauce, but I assure you that the totality of supply chain needs it. That returns is always done poorly. Um, just to speak to wine, because you asked specifically about wine, what generally happens is they, by and large, it's not a human being per se returning it. Wine requires an adult signature. Exactly. Wine requires an adult signature. And it's parcel deliveries will give you three shots at it, and then they'll send it back. And that creates all the normal problems with returns, but with wine, it actually creates a few unique ones in certain environments. During the summer, when we ship in the summer, we ship cold chain and we ship at ice packs. Returns are not, those ice packs are no longer any good, and it generally doesn't come back cold chain. It comes back
Mm.
on a truck that wine's boiling. Wine does not like heat, it does not freezing. So whether it was a $15 cab or a $15,000 cab, and yes, we have both in that warehouse right there. Now you can't cook with it because it's ruined. So that in itself is problematic. But once it gets back, the paperwork is generally not well placed. We're trying to figure out if we pull the bottles out, but you know how close a 15 cab looks to a 17 cab that's the same varietal, the same winery. They look almost identical. We need SKUs, but now those SKU labels have been lost. So it is just, I just assume none ever come back. I realize your business, I wish returns would just become a thing of the past. It'll never happen. It's very troubling. And the industry, surprisingly, I guess e-commerce has done something to it, but this industry is not solved at the level I think it's required. I'm real excited to see what your company's, because it's not solved that problem, and it's not nothing. It's a real problem in the supply chain.
It is often shocking to hear how it is like returns and reverse logistics in general is handled so differently than everything else in the four walls. It's very antiquated. It's, you know, clipboards and swivel chair processes and, trying to figure out what do I do with this item. And so it really is a drain on, efficiency and profitability. And so that's what we're really passionate about. And, we're thankful that our customers, with our software have been able to solve that. And you mentioned visibility earlier, and I remember many, many conversations around control tower and stuff like that. But people want to know, they want that transparency.
Yeah.
And it's really the same with returns, on both the retailer or manufacturer side, but also on the shopper side, right? Like, where's my refund? I sent this
Right.
item back. Like, I want to know, when I'm getting my money. And then on the retailer side, like when am I getting my shirt back or my shoes back? And when
Right.
can I list it for resale? And so, one thing that has been really cool to see in recent years is, we're a returns management system. So we span that entire life cycle. And we always say there's really three key touch points in the returns life cycle. There's that shopper initiation, there's that return method, and then there's that four-wall processing. And an RMS spans that whole thing and gives visibility into that
Yeah.
whole thing, which is one reason we are able to actually drive value for our customers. So this is not a question, but
Yeah.
sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to say that is key. That visibility is missing in this industry. And what happens in warehouses is truck backs up, you open the door, and there's just a bunch of stuff you wouldn't expect it. And you didn't have labor there for that thing because you didn't expect it. And to your point, those retailers will know where their shirt is or where their bottle of wine is. And we'll get to disposition when we get to it. I don't mean that in any other way than we wasn't prepared. So now we got to bring labor in and it's part of that process. So that visibility is key.
Yeah. So what do you guys do with returned wine? Just out of curiosity. Y'all have like an employee grab and go?
We, we have a little party every night. No, that is not
I'm
true.
submitting my application today.
Excellent. No, it's the same with all other retailers. We'll bring it in. We do have a tool that we'll send via electronic, so they can dial in and they'll see that these have been returned, and then we wait on disposition. Sometimes disposition is put it back in stock. Sometimes disposition is destroy it, and sometimes it is give to your employees. So we have thousands and thousands of bottles of wine. We have over in caves that we will dwell out to employees that we want to be responsible to. That we're not handing out inappropriate amount, but we do have cages full of wine where the wineries turned over title to us. We do it very formally, but we do have title to that wine. But that's most of it gets destroyed because of its journey back. It's the ones that come back in spring and fall where temperatures are mild enough that they will put them back in stock or say give them to your employees. But most get destroyed because it can't take the heat, can't take the cold.
That is so sad to hear.
It
What a
is.
waste.
Yeah, it
So,
is.
one of the largest expenses that I know fulfillment providers have is labor. And obviously, it's a tight labor market. It's hard to attract, hire and retain labor. And of course, that you fulfillment providers are looking at like how do we reduce our dependency on labor. And I saw you present in Memphis years ago on robots and how robots are kind of supplementing that. And a lot of our software is around automating returns processes in a facility. But what's some of the automation that you guys are using that you couldn't live without or you couldn't operate as efficiently as you guys do?
Yeah, it's a great question. I do want to do a shout out to warehouse workers. If you ever see one thing, because those people work their tails off. That is a tough job. At Geodis, we were highly mechanized. They still are. I guess I can say we, since I still participate there in some form. Um, very, very mechanized. Now, you may recall one of our facilities moved 800,000 units a day, had the capability of moving 800,000 units a day. 3 miles of mechanization, Bombay dump trays, just an amazing wizardry watching products go flying through a warehouse. In this industry, wine bottles are a lot heavier, they're fragile, so you have to have more humans touching than a lot of different other industries like apparel. If this thing gets dropped, it'll be fine. You just pick it up and knock the dust off of it and put it back in. Water drops, oh well, there's a $15,000 bottle that's I'm going to get to pay for it now. But we do have a fair amount of conveyance. So I used to think of that as mechanization, and we started building these super mega warehouses. And I don't think of it that way as much. With the robotics that we have, where I come from, the Locust robotics and the pick on. We don't have any of that here, but quite honestly, return on investment here is not as robust as it is in other industries. You can get a stack of socks and shirts and those robots that will hold a lot of goods, but you really can't. You can't get many of these wine bottles. And that is an unusual thing.
That looks like a supersized bottle.
That's what I had for breakfast this morning. No, I'm kidding. But that right there, that's the equivalent to 6 bottles of wine. But if you just think about a normal bottle, forgive me, I'm going to reach down. Do you mind if I reach down real quick? Under my desk?
You have wine under your desk.
I'm surrounded by wine, man. What are you talking about? I'm surrounded by wine.
There are worse things.
They are. And this is a very nice bottle. I shouldn't show you the label because I don't want anybody to think I have one client I like better than the next. But the point is, these are fragile. These things are fragile and they're heavy. So we do conveyance, but box erectors we have to have because we have so much corrugate in our business. It surprised me when I got here, but it is our 3rd largest expense line. Just all the packaging with corrugate. You got to make sure you protect that wine, and so there's a lot of corrugate around it. Those box erectors are important. The conveyance is important. We don't have anything particularly really unique in terms of automation. And that's because the return on investment is not there with the amount of product that we have pushed through a warehouse.
Yeah, it's like a unique kind of feature. And I know we talk with Locust often. We have an integration with Locust, and it's really, there's like a profile of product that makes sense for certain types of robots and other types, and the cobots versus more of the other kinds. So that makes sense for sure.
I will tell you that Locust is trying. There is a firm that's trying Locust in wine, so I'm eager to see how that goes.
Interesting. And you don't have to distribute wine to the robots, so more for the employees.
Exactly. I like the way I've always liked you, man.
You said something earlier, and I'm like, man, wine is the definition of precious cargo.
For sure.
Well, so just a couple more questions here. This has been so fun. I think there's retailers and brands that do their own fulfillment and do that well, and then there's brands and retailers that are like, we tried it, not our thing. And like, what are your tips, or what's critical for manufacturers, retailers, brands to consider when they're looking at like, hey, do I outsource my fulfillment, or do I keep it in house? Like, what do they need to think about, and what advice do you have for them in that journey?
Yeah, this is going to sound real self-serving, but I actually believe it to be true. It is up against impossible for manufacturer, producer, retailer to do it as well as a 3PL. That's what they do. They have scale. They've invested in all the tools, the warehouse management system, transportation management system, the labor management system. I'll put name things, and they have buying power that likely that producer wouldn't have. I mean, there's some that are big enough, certainly, but it's very, very few where I can go buy that corrugate a lot cheaper than any winery here. When I say a lot cheaper, I mean a lot. My parcel rates are materially better because of my scale. But it's what I do. So every day I'm looking to how I can do this more effectively. I'm not talking about me making more money. I'm talking about providing better service, because the highest margin customer I have is the ones that stay with me. So I want to make sure that we are finding the best possible service that's available. There's just no way that a manufacturer who's worrying about product development and marketing and all the things you have to do to be a man can be great at supply chain also. And that's the reason the biggest ones out there, by and large, all but one use a 3PL. I can only think of one that does it. and because they understand that that's not their jam, if you will. They need someone who does that for a living.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in the same camp. I think it's, it's a core competency, and lean into core competencies where you should, right? Um, so we talked a lot about kind of like the retail supply side and whatnot, but just for a moment, for anyone who's listening, maybe that's just a wine lover or a wine orderer, what tips do you have for shoppers that are looking to purchase online? Any like secrets or anything you would share?
In terms
Put
of
in, put in the right address, I guess, is step one.
that will materially improve your chances of getting that product for sure. Well, the biggest step I have is, past the obvious ones you said, address, proper credit card number, proper credentials. Um, if you're ordering an alcohol beverage, you are not serving yourself if you're not going to be there when you deliver. Because that product is going to turn around and get right back to somewhere in California, which is where most of the wine comes from. And if you're sitting in Nashville, Tennessee, which is where I think you're sitting right now, Natalie, that's a long journey out there and a long journey back. And in terms of just general stuff, really the same thing. Any high value goods, make sure you're there to bring that in house. Unfortunately, the rise in porch theft continues to go up, and it will until we get a solution for it. Right now, the solution is get the product indoors. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's good advice. Okay, so last question, and this is a total curveball,
Uh-oh.
uh, but maybe the most important we talk about today.
Okay.
If you could bring back, so we both went to Alabama, graduated from Alabama, Roll Tide again. If
Yeah.
you could bring back one Alabama quarterback for one season, who would it be and why?
Oh, so I just hope people remember his name because he is no longer with us. It'd be Kenny Stabler. I thought Kenny was amazing. You could not get your hands on him. They called him the snake for a reason. He just, he could throw a pass on a string, and it was hard for the defense to get their hands on him. So I just thought he was amazing. That's what
Yeah,
I know. Most people think of Tua and Bryce, and I think your favorite's John Parker Wilson, if I remember correctly.
I think you might be misremembering.
Oh, is that right? Maybe I got that wrong. Maybe it was Jay Parker. I don't know. Parker,
you
Parker.
know, John Parker and I went to high school together, so I know John Parker well. And then obviously went to Alabama together as well. But it's funny because I actually grew up a Florida State fan. I don't know if you know this about me. And
No.
so I grew up watching Bobby Bowden and, Ward Dunn and that whole era of football. And when I went to Alabama, I'm embarrassed to say this, I'll probably get some shade for it. I didn't know who Bear Bryant was.
Oh my.
And I went to Alabama because they gave me the most scholarship money. So I now know, and I'm now educated on everything Alabama as well as my kids. But little fun fact is my family is from Florida, so we grew up and it was either Florida State versus in Alabama, it's Auburn, Alabama,
Yeah.
which that choice is an easy one to make for us, right?
So I'll age myself. He actually coached while I was there. Uh, Unfortunately, he also passed away while I was there.
Oh,
I got
yeah.
to I got a season with him coaching or being there, and then of course he ended up passing away. Yeah, now everyone goes, he's going to be at least in his 60s. That's because
No one was doing the math. You look great.
well, thank you, very very kind of you.
Well, I unfortunately left Alabama right before Saban got there. So I missed out. I, in fact, studied abroad one fall because football was, I think we lost to Louisiana Monroe one year when I was in school there. So I'm
Mhm.
aging myself here, but
Yeah, I am so sorry that I had never done that math, Natalie. I didn't realize that you were there during the drought.
the drought, yes, the Shula and Mike Price drought.
Those were sad times. Can
I'm
we just
probably
not move on? Can we just move on? I don't want to think about it.
I'm going to get it. Speaking of cease and desist, I'm going to get a cease and desist from their attorneys probably.
Probably. Me too.
Well, Randy, this was so wonderful. I love all of our conversations, but especially today, just to kind of get a peek into your world at wine shipping and the important work that y'all are doing, and your just expertise in 3PL in general. Um, and folks, if you're listening today, there you have it, the ABCs of supply chain with Randy Tucker from Wine Shipping. Randy, thank you again for joining us and sharing all this with us.
You're always a delight. Thank you so much, Natalie.
And thrilled to have you. So I'm your host. I'm Natalie Walkley, and we hope that you will join us next time at Returnology, where we provide you the cheat sheet to help you ace returns. See you next time.